gave the best talk of the CIC. Schneider's was phenomenal. The Nigerian Bishops was phenomenal. I didn't hear Candace's main conversion story, but I heard that was really good. So many people told me that that was a really good conversion story. But I really do think Mark Lambert's, like, it was just it was just so heartfelt, you know. It was just from the heart. I mean, when you hear somebody talk about the loss of their child, there's something that just moves your heart in a way that you don't know how to handle it, you know, because you immediately put yourself in that situation.
You picture it right away, and man,
you can't help it. And the idea of losing a child, oh my gosh, man, because when you're a parent, if your kid stubs their toe, you would cut your own toe off to spare them that pain. And Mark's story was so sad. It wasn't a disease, it was in an instant. And it was because he got a new car. And he had taken his he had all boys, Mark. And then he finally had a little girl. And he talked about how this little girl melted his heart. And it was something he never had expected. And
you don't.
No,
you really don't. It just,
listen, I told you that before you had your little girl.
Did, and I'm like, no,
you not even know what you're in store for, because daddy's little girl is something. Like, your boys are just rough and tumble and you play tough with them, but your girl is different.
With my boys, like, maybe this is just me, but with my boys, like, I have a real sense of like duty and responsibility to raise them into good men, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's, that responsibility is always there. It's always in the back of my mind when I'm interacting with them. And it makes you, how do I say this? With my daughter, with Philomena, like, it's just love, right? And it's just protecting and loving and being there. With my boys, it's more like, no, I need to teach you this right now. I need to show you this. I need you to be prepared for this. With my daughter, it's like, I just need to be there for you.
Yeah. And it's interesting also because as they get old, as your daughters get older, like my girls are now 17 and 13, it gets to where you do want to just spoil them as your little princess too, because you want them to have a high standard of how a man should treat them. You know, you don't want them falling for some dirtbag guy that's going to treat them incorrectly. So you do like, so my son gets more leeway with things he's allowed to do than my girls, but my girls get a lot more
mercy
and financial support and, you know, things like that. Like my son's like, why do I got to pay my car insurance? Sophia doesn't have to pay hers. It's like, teaching to be a man in this lesson, you just don't realize it, you know, where I don't want my daughter having to worry about that right now. Like, there's just it's a different role that they have. And kids will start the comparison thing. It's like you're not getting,
well, especially in our day and age where they're fed this, you know, false notion of equality of the sexes and things like that. Not just equality of the sexes, even my boys, they're not equal. Right. I love them.
You love them both with all of your heart.
Right. 100%. But they're not equal. They're not the same. They can't be the same.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You'll raise all of your kids differently. I think the thing we all have to be careful of is to not compare them ourselves. Right. So we all have to be cautious not to go, your sister would never do that. Your brother would never do that. Like, that is such a red line.
Harmful.
Very harmful, because it'll give your kid a complex. So that's something you really do have to be cautious of, not to go, your brother would never do this. Like, because you're going to have you're going to have a kid that does everything right. And you're going to have the one kid that's a little bit trickier, and you have to find a way to love them both and not compare them. They're different and they're unique, and they're intentionally so, and God created them that way. It's very tricky. So, but when Mark told this story, he was so in love with this little girl, and he took his boys out in his brand new car. He had this little sports car that he got, and the boys had been out in it, and she had been begging him for days to take her for a ride. And he said, okay, fine, I'll take you for a ride. Let's go. And he put her in it, and he was driving, and it was raining out, and he hit a hydroplane and the car overturned. and she died instantly. And this man had me in tears telling this story. But that I'm not going to tell the story of how he got out of it, because we're going to have him on and he's going to tell this story. But just the way that Mary was involved, how an instance of him and his wife just falling to their knees and praying at a shrine to Our Lady just really brought them back together. It was just a beautiful story. So I'll let him tell it.
I don't know how I would ever go about, like,
especially knowing you were the reason, like you
right. How would I ever forgive myself or heal from that without, you know,
Mark Lambert, not Michael. Yeah, it's not like Jeremiah's story where Jeremiah's daughter got sick. Right. He had time to prepare for it. This was just something that happened in an instant, and he lost his daughter over in a second, and it was him that was behind the wheel, and he survived. And it's just like you don't know how a person goes on after something like that. You know, it's just you really just don't know how someone goes on after that. I don't know.
Paul, what's his name on Twitter? Sitsio or
Sitsio, yeah, at
Sitsio,
Sitsio. He's on the Catholic Unscripted show with Gavin Ashenden and Catherine Bennett.
He's like Anthony if Anthony was born in like Manchester, England.
Yeah, so listen. So all right. Well, some of the funny stories that happened while we were out at dinner. So everybody makes this big deal out of Gavin being chaplain to the Queen of England, right? So like
when really he was just like one of like 30. It's no big deal,
there's tons of chaplains.
Yeah, the man faced down the KGB, but come on.
Yeah, so these women come up to us while we're at dinner and they're just like gloating over, they're fawning over
a proper English gentleman, like
over Gavin, right?
Like
so
Gavin.
Before they come over, we were talking about how Gavin was like, he's like, Michael Matt made a big deal over me being chaplain to the Queen. And I'm like, Mark, I'm like, Gavin, don't ruin the facade. Like, let people have this, let them think you were her personal confessor, like that's the idea, So these women come over to the table and they're like, I can't believe you were chaplain to the Queen. I'm like, he was her personal confessor. And they were like, really? I'm like, many don't know this, but the Queen of England died of a broken heart when Gavin converted to Catholicism.
Meanwhile, St. Alphonsus is in his grave wondering, like, why do I even try to tell people that you can't even lie in jokes?
Dude, I had the whole table rolling when I told that joke. I'm like, the Queen died of a broken heart. But the guy that took us out, I don't know who he is. I mean, I know his name, but I'm pretty sure he's a big deal, and I think I rubbed him the wrong way. Like he's from Minnesota, I think. I think he's from your neck of the woods. So he's like this.
Oh yeah.
Quiet,
you rubbed him the wrong way then, bud.
This quiet, polite Midwest guy. And I think he was just like, whoa, this guy is he's a handful.
So what you're saying is I might have to deal with lunches with potential benefactors in the future.
Yeah. Potential benefactors, you might be better to send you. But what's funny is Michael Hitchborn he's just the greatest freaking guy I've ever known. He's fun. He is. I legit love that guy. Like, I'm so glad he's my friend. Like I went there. I met his mother and his oldest son. Okay. And his oldest son was 21 years old. This kid goes to Christendom College. He spent the whole weekend with us. So smart, like an intellectual, just like Michael. I told Michael as I was leaving, I'm like, you have no idea how much my estimation of you went up by meeting your son and seeing what kind of boy you raised,
That's what you can really determine, like, the measure of a man.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, if
kids have
goes
free
wrong.
Will. Yeah, kids have free will. They get into bad stuff. But seeing this kid was just, I was just so impressed. And but the introduction to the guy that took us out was on Michael's part. Right. So Michael went out of his way to say, hey, I want you to meet Anthony. He's got, his show is the perfect mix of intellectualism and humor and serious topics and light topics and what's going on in current event. Like, he went out of his way to try to help make a good impression of us on this guy, and
then you opened your mouth.
Well, I am who I am, Rob.
Oh, I know.
I am who I am. I cannot be what I am not. So